And top story is always brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion is also brought to you by Gassim, Cement the Nation Build, and Vodafone. The future is exciting, ready. Now, news just coming in. Journalists is learning in the last few minutes that Parliament's Subsidiary Legislation Committee has today taken a vote on whether or not to reject the controversial constitutional instrument that will empower the Electoral Commission to compile a new voters register. The vote was taken shortly, we understand, after the Commission made a strong case in defense of the CI, which will exclude the birth certificate and the voters' ID cards, the previous voters' ID cards, as requirement for getting onto the new register. Also before Parliament today to make his case for rejection was MP for Boko Central, Mahama Yarega. Now, he had filed a motion asking Parliament to reject the CI. Well, that motion was thrown out by the Speaker, and he was instead asked to take his case before the Subsidiary Legislation Committee. He spoke to parliamentary correspondent Joseph Gapo shortly after appearing before that committee.
Yeah, the Speaker sent me a memo, in effect declining to admit the motion, but urging that I should go before the Subsidiary Legislation Committee and present my arguments to them so that they will capture it in their report, which report will be debated in chamber on the floor, and then at that point I will also have an opportunity to argue my case once my arguments have been captured in the report.
Are you okay with that, or you would have rather loved to have the chance to really make your case on your own if you are given the opportunity to move the motion?
I would love an opportunity to make my case. A motion would have served me better, but appearing before the committee, making the arguments, having the arguments recorded and presented in the report will also give me an opportunity to still make my case in Parliament. And I did appear before the committee.
In summary, very briefly, what argument did he make before the committee this afternoon?
I appeared before the committee this afternoon, and I made a strong case that the removal of the birth certificate or the non-inclusion of a birth certificate in the proposed CI is unconstitutional and it is overly restrictive. I also urge them to add a previous voter ID card because that makes it relatively easier for most Ghanaians.
And I want to take you to Parliament right now, where, as I indicated earlier, we're getting some news just coming in about a vote that the Subsidiary Legislation Committee have taken today on this particular matter. Joseph Opoku-Gapo is my parliamentary correspondent, joins me live. Joseph, can you confirm this, and what do we know about how this vote went?
So, just to give a little background, this CI is expected to mature on Tuesday, the 9th of June, 2020. Next week, Tuesday, that's the final day. You know, when a CI comes to Parliament, it's supposed to stay in the House for 21 continuous sitting days after which it becomes law. That date is due next week, Tuesday. Now, before that date is due, the Committee of Subsidiary Legislation is expected to present a report to Parliament recommending the way forward. Now, that committee, as we all know, is chaired by Dr. Dominic Ayine, who is former Deputy Attorney General and also the MP for Bogatanga East, and it has Yabo Abia Samuel, the Attentan MP, as the ranking member. It's one of the few committees that's chaired by a minority MP, but the majority number of MPs on it is actually the New Patriotic Party. So there are 14 New Patriotic Party MPs on that, and then there are 11 minority MPs. Now, all the minority MPs who were present at the meeting voted against the approval, while the majority MPs voted in favor for, and it was a 12-9 vote. So all the NPP MPs who were present, 12 of them voted in favor, while the 9 NDC MPs voted against. And so, in summary, what it means is that later this week, before Tuesday, the committee is supposed to submit a report to Parliament recommending what the way forward should be. And the committee's recommendation will be that Parliament allows for this document to mature and be approved, so that the EC will be able to go ahead with the process.
I mean, this almost certainly brings finality to this debate. I mean, if the minority side, what has played out tonight at the committee level will most certainly play out when it comes to the plenary. Based on experience, it doesn't change, does it?
Exactly the case. The worst that could happen will be that the minority MPs will insist on a vote count where each MP will be forced to necessarily cast a vote, whether in support or against the committee's report, rather than a voice vote which may take just about 2 or 3 minutes once the debate is done, and end up dragging the process for maybe 2 to 3 hours just so every single MP can vote. But that's essentially what it means. That as it played out at the level of the committee earlier today, when eventually the report still comes to Parliament for approval, the minority MPs will vote against, but the majority MPs will vote in favor of. And as you rightly indicated, we gathered that this was a marathon meeting earlier in the day. Before the vote was taken, both Mensah as well as Samuel Tete, who are deputy commissioners of the Electoral Commission, we gathered were present to make a case insisting that they would want this CI to mature, despite the minority MPs, including Mahama Yarege's concern that excluding the birth certificate and the old voter ID card will be unconstitutional in terms of the required materials in order to get onto the voters register. But the EC officials repeatedly made the argument that even beyond those two documents, it's possible for an already registered voter to guarantee for those who would want to vote, and so that wouldn't result in anyone being disenfranchised.
So that was the Electoral Commission's defense today before the committee, and I guess that may have swayed the majority members, or of course, as we know, a lot of them probably came to this with their minds already made up. Although we must say, as we indicated earlier, Mahama Yarege also got an opportunity to present an alternative case, making a case for rejection.
Exactly. It very much looks so that a lot of the majority MPs went in very clear in their mind that they were going to actually vote in favor of this particular constitutional instrument. The other interesting bit is that there was an argument about the whole conversation around facial recognition we gather. Because previously, you recall that argument had been made that with the CI as has been introduced in Parliament, the minority MPs, or virtually all of them, argued that it doesn't make room for facial recognition, and that if the EC wants to introduce that as part of the registration, then they would have to amend this particular CI, which has actually been amended on a number of occasions, because it was first introduced in Parliament back on the 17th of March this year, but we saw a situation where the majority leader, Authority Mensah, had to withdraw it on 2 different occasions because it was defective as far as what was brought was concerned. And eventually the final document that was laid on the 4th of April is actually what has held sway and has been counted since. And so a lot of the minority MPs were arguing that if the EC wants to allow for facial recognition, then they need to withdraw this and introduce a new one. But the EC officials again made an argument that this particular provision makes room for the capturing of photos of individuals. And once that room is made, it can be interpreted to mean that it also allows for facial recognition. And we gather that these are all portions of the argument that will be captured in the committee's report, which will eventually be brought to the floor of Parliament for the eventual approval.
And of course, this is your election headquarters. You'll be hearing a lot of that sick tune as we build up into December for that elections on December 7th. A lot is unfolding tonight, including the MPP itself holding a meeting currently to decide when to hold their primaries. But I want to stay with this developing story that we just broke for you today. The vote taken by the Subsidiary Legislation Committee on that very controversial constitutional instrument that will empower the Electoral Commission to conduct and compile a new voters register. As you heard my parliamentary correspondent break that news, it went 12 for the CI, 9 against the CI, And from what we know from parliamentary history, this will play out when it comes to the floor for a final debate. I want to bring in now the ranking member on that subsidiary legislation committee, Boabing Asamoah, who is member of parliament for the Denton constituency. Mr. Asamoah, so it turns out from what we're hearing that your side carried the day when the vote was put to members of the subsidiary legislation committee. What convinced you, or you went into this already with your minds made up?
Yes, good evening, and let me say a very good evening to your listeners as well. I thought you would begin by commiserating with me that I'm not at the meeting where my fate will be decided because of what you say is a controversial issue.
That's right. That's true. Especially seeing that you are the party's communications director and you have to be communicating what that meeting.
I should have been at the meeting, but because of this CI, I am unable to be. But I believe that the results will go well for us and enhance democracy. And
I can tell my listeners that we have a report there for them tonight. Immediately a decision is taken at the meeting that Mr. Bami Asamoah has missed. I will get Bami Asamoah to hear it first. Possibly before he finishes talking to me, that decision will come, and I'll get my reporter to join me with that breaking news also. So this is the place to be, Mr. Bami Asamoah, since you're missing that meeting. But tell me, did you go into this with your minds made up?
Absolutely not. But unfortunately, we have to accept and admit as members of the committee that there's huge public interest that literally was polarized already before. But this committee over time has always tried to build consensus. There was open, frank debate, very, very frank debate. And I must commend all members. We had a near full house. I must commend all members, as well as friends of the committee. As if you're aware of parliamentary committee work, other MPs can join us and contribute to the debate but can't vote. So we had the opportunity to hear Honorable Ayariga, sedate. He really went to town on his submissions, and we all listened very, very carefully, responded carefully as well. So we had a good day's debate, a very good day's debate. But the bottom line is that, for me and for the majority side, you have a situation where a means of identification for eligibility is being canvassed, Evans. Evans, I'm going to try and summarize the argument that determined the vote the way it went.
Okay.
That a means of eligibility, identification for eligibility to put on the voter roll was being canvassed when, within the procedures and confines of the committee, it would have been difficult to adopt. Because much as the Honorable Ayaga delivered scholarship on the birth certificate as a good primary document, etc., this, according to our rules, the subsidiary legislation rules, could not be adopted because we are proceeding by way of amendment of CI 91. And if you are amending the parent document, you cannot import and add on new matters which are over and above the parent document. The CI 91 does not contain any provisions for the use of birth certificates for identification as an eligibility mechanism for being entered on the register of voters. Pre-CI 91, the CI 72 didn't either. Indeed, from all the records, none of the CIs that enable determination of eligibility to be put on included birth certification. And therefore, for it to be canvassed now, a process that does not allow legally, lawfully, parliamentary practice-wise, constitutionally, does not allow the committee to insert that, irrespective then of the validity of the argument, it would still fall flat. So we are constrained by the rules, and we need to follow the rules. This is Parliament.
So just for clarity, all the CIs before what you're dealing with currently had all not had the birth certificate as a criteria for getting onto the register.
No.
Okay.
None of them. None of them. See, including the parents here. Don't forget, this is not a brand new CI. If it was a brand new CI with entirely new provisions distinct from CI 91, then you could have considered that in the light of current circumstances, with hindsight, current scholarship and otherwise, it is possible to include it. That's fine. You would then have had a very solid argument. But the process is that we haven't tabled before Parliament. It's not a brand new CI. It is an amendment of the existing CI. So after this amendment, which just seeks to change the eligibility requirements, all the rest of CI 91 will still be in operation. So by the amendment process itself, we are not in a position to add on.
Also clarify this for me then, because Mama Yaga's second argument is about the exclusion in this particular CI of one's previous voter's ID card. What about that?
Yeah, the Commission has explained, and that also is out there in the public domain. And you go to the records, the court cases, it's all there, that the NHIA card that was used by some people to get onto that voter register, and for which people are holding cards, was declared illegal by the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, the EC was never able to satisfactorily clean the register as required. The Supreme Court gave instructions, gave an order. We all recollect that a list of names was brought to the Supreme Court. But then, we are also aware, and there was widespread satisfaction with it. The Abu Ramadan cases, as many as traveled 3 times through the courts. In the third case, there was dissatisfaction expressed about the way and manner in which that exercise was delivered. And as we speak, there are many, many Ghanaians who personally use the NHIA as the proof to acquire the voter registration card, whose names are still on the register, and who, if you extend the invitation, Joy FM, they will willingly come up and prove that, yes, they still have the voter ID card and they use NHIA cards, and they were never cleaned from the electoral register. So the EC contends that they simply didn't have adequate records. It's a mistake, it's a fault, but it's an institutional fault that they didn't have adequate records of the Form A, which contains the primary information, and therefore were handicapped in doing that cleaning. So for them, it is better at this stage to start from a clean slate.
You know what? Let me bring in Mr. Mahama Yaga himself. Thankfully, he joins me on the line. Mr. Yaga, thank you for your time. Mr. Bamasama, kindly hold the line for me. Thank you, Mr. Yaga, for joining me. You went before the committee today. You made your case. But as we are just learning, when the matter was put to a vote, your side lost 9 against 12.
Yeah, but it was only based on Ayaga's submission.
Oh, no, of course. I get that. I mean, because I'm speaking to him, I'm just asking him his bit. Your reaction to how the vote turned out, Ms. Ayaga?
Well, I mean, that is set, especially when a matter is that divisive and the division is along party lines. So I don't have an issue with the outcome, but I believe that the outcome is wrong. But it also doesn't end the matter there, because that vote is going to be reported to plenary, and at plenary we will have the opportunity to debate the report. And I will still move at plenary that the CI should be rejected by the House, and I will repeat my arguments if they are not adequately captured in the report. I still stand by the position that...
But that will be an exercise in futility, will it not? I mean, the way it's panned out at the committee level, it's almost certain it will pan out again when it comes to plenary. The majority side will win.
Well, let's wait and see. The point is not to win at all costs. The point is to make the argument and have the records to capture the argument so that a decision can be made by the entire House. So for me, that is equally important. The process is equally important. Let me just address substantively the arguments of my colleague there. The yardstick should be the Constitution. And I repeated, during the committee meeting that Article 42 is clear. It says that a citizen 18 years of age or above and of sound mind. So any CI should be regulating how to determine that you are either a citizen or you are 18 years or above, or that you are not of unsound mind. That is what any regulation should be concerned about. And I argued before them that the Citizenship Act talks about people being born in Ghana at a certain time and whose parentage or grandparentage are Ghanaian or born in Ghana. Those are the criteria, born in Ghana. And I'm saying that the institution by legislation with the authority to certify that a person was born in Ghana at any given time is the birth and death registry. And so it is not possible for a CI which seeks to implement Article 42 to refuse to include in what you need to use to prove your eligibility a certificate from the birth and death registry. Absolutely impossible. Whether previous electoral commissioners allowed that to happen or not is not the issue here. This is my argument that I presented to them.
And you say it is unconstitutional.
It's absolutely unconstitutional.
So it begs the question.
It is restrictive.
Okay.
Of my rights, because I need to prove to the Electoral Commission that I am a citizen and that I am 18 years of age or above. And I'm saying that by the laws of Ghana, the primary document that proves that I was born in Ghana at a given time, of parents who were also born in Ghana at a given time, which is the basis of my citizenship, that document
is the birth certificate. But let me ask you, I mean, you've made this argument and it's part of your motion. We've read it. I've spoken to you about it. Now where we are, where the vote that has been taken, which gives an indication where all this will end up eventually, it begs the question. If it's unconstitutional, then you have recourse in the courts to take on a different leg of this battle. Will you exercise that right of yours?
I will. If Tuesday the CI comes into force, I will go to court to get a court order for the EC to accept my birth certificate as evidence of my eligibility to be registered. That I think any citizen can do, because that is a primary document that proves that I was born on a certain day in Ghana by parents who were also born on a certain day in Ghana, and by virtue of that record and certification by the Birth and Death Registry, which is a body created by statute. That's the Registration of Birth and Death Act of 1965, Act 301. Once it is a creature of statute and given that legal authority to certify my birth and my parentage, that document will be used to determine my citizenship, and it is that document that the Electoral Commission should rely on.
Okay.
We may rely on other documents like the National Identification Authority, because another act of Parliament establishes the National Identification Authority and says that it can identify citizens and give them a card certifying that they are citizens. So that one can also be used. Another act also says that a passport can be issued to a citizen. So a passport can also be used. And my argument to them is that I don't understand why they choose to ignore a previous certification by the Electoral Commission that I am a citizen and voted. And then today they say no, they will not accept that, but they will accept somebody vouching for me that I'm a citizen.
Yeah. Okay.
I find that quite ridiculous.
Let me bring in
and lastly, but
very briefly, because I just ran out of time.
Yes. When we put the question to the Electoral Commission, why they didn't want to accept the birth certificate, the response they gave me was that it is because your photograph is not on your birth certificate. I found that quite ridiculous.
Okay. Let me bring in Bobby Asoma. Bobby Asoma, so do you accept? He says he's eventually going to go to court on this. Is it a challenge that you welcome?
The beauty of our current democracy is the ability to engage and expand. But we also have to admit that our institutions are still growing. I mean, on the face of it, these arguments are very beautiful. You are quoting a 1965 Act, consequent to which several CIs have been made, which ignored that Act. But now, if you go into it practically, the law itself states, and it was debunked by a very senior member of the committee, that registration should be done within 21 days. The registration of a birth should be done within 21 days. Now we are all aware that people do it 45 years later, 60 years later, 22 years later, in order to meet certain purposes of their own. So you are imposing a very heavy burden on the EC to determine whether or not the law itself empowering them to presume that they are certified citizens, may not have been dealt with effectively and properly in its context by the people who are holding those cards. So essentially, it's all arguable. And I enjoy the ferment, the growth of institutions, the growth and width of the law.
Respond to that.
Because if you will recall...
Gentlemen, I have 10 seconds to wrap up. Until
yes. Let me correct that.
I think that when we get to the floor, the debate will be vigorous. But the bottom line is that 3/4, we need a majority of the House.
Okay, gentlemen, I know this is a very heated conversation, but I have to go on this one. I'm grateful, Bahama Yarega and Babina Samwa, who is a ranking member on that committee in the House, that just took a vote on the matter. If you're just joining us, the Subsidiary Legislation Committee took a vote today on whether or not to reject the constitutional instrument that will empower the Electoral Commission to compile a new voters register, and it went like this: 12 members of Parliament on the committee for the CI to go through, 9 against it, and so of course the CI is expected to now go through, barring any last minute hitches that invariably won't happen, because the committee will recommend that the CI be allowed to mature next week, Tuesday. This is your election headquarters. And of course, there's no way you will run out of things to do during this time of difficulty, with many of you still at home, because Vodafone has got you sorted with too much data. Now, double the data at the same price. So whether you are taking an exciting masterclass or binge watching Netflix series like I do, or bringing the party to Zoom, you now get too much data for the day and too much bonus for midnight till 4 a.m. Now that's a bit more fun and a way more that you are paying for. Dial star 700 hash to get 3 GB data for 10 CDs and 8 GB data for 20 CDs and 20 GB data for 50 CDs bundles. Stay home and stay connected with Vodafone, because with too much data, there's almost nothing you can't do. Ready?